This is the final in a series of 4 sermons where I've placed one of the extra canonical Gospels, those Gospels that didn't make it into the Bible, in conversation with the canonical Gospels, those that we consider, the standard of our conversation, the foundational point from which we speak about the love of God. Today is the Gospel of Judas, and Judas is a funny one because we only have one copy, and it's, kind of only 2/3 of a copy. And nobody quite knows where it got dug up. It turned up on the antiquities markets in Egypt in the 1980s. And then the National Geographic somehow got hold of it, and they published it in 2006. And there was a lot, you may remember, there was a lot said about it. There was a special, I think, on PBS about the Gospel of Judas. Now, the thing I've noticed about these Gospels, we've done Thomas and Peter and Mary and now Judas. And in each one of them, you'll find a passage where they say, Jesus was my special friend and he gave me a special vision. I just find that kind of curious. Even the Gospel of John hints at that, but doesn't quite say that. It refers to its author as the beloved disciple. But in any case, Judas is it's an odd account. In the vision that Jesus gives to Judas, Jesus tells another creation story. And it's rather complex. It begins with the creation of the self-generating one, who then creates angels, and another level of angels, and another level, and another level, until finally we are created. And so I'm going to read pieces of it to give you an idea, and then skip later. And then we'll read the text from Matthew. Jesus said to Judas, "Come and I will teach you about the mysteries that no human will see. For there is a great and limitless realm whose size no angelic race has seen. There's a great invisible spirit within it, whom no angelic eyes have seen, nor inner thought received, nor has been called by any name. In that place a luminous cloud appeared, and the invisible spirit said, 'Let an angel come, so that this being may attend to me.' And a great angel, self-generated, God of light, came out of the cloud, and 4 other angels came out of another cloud for him, and they came into being to attend to the angelic self-generated. And the self-generated said, 'Let a realm come into being.' And it happened just as he said, and he established the first light to rule over it. He said, 'Let some angels come into being to serve it.' And a countless myriad came into being. Then he said, 'Let a luminous realm come into being.' And it came into being, and he established the second light to rule over it." You've gotten the idea, right? Finally, he creates an angel named Eleleth. And after this, Eleleth says, "Let angels come into being to rule over chaos and the underworld." And indeed, an angel appeared from out of the cloud, and his face spewed forth fire. Now his likeness was defiled with blood, and his name was Nebro, which translates apostate. Others say Yelalbath. And another angel too, Saklas, came out of the crowd. Then Nebro created 6 angels, and so did Saklas, to be in attendance. And these produced 12 angels in the heavens, and each of them received a share in the heavens. And there were 12 rulers and 12 angels. There were the first 6, and then there was a 7th, and then were 5. And these 5 ruled over the underworld and over that first chaos. And Seklas said to the angels, "Let's create human being after the likeness and the image." And they formed Adam and Eve. Now in the cloud, Zoe, for in his name all the races seek him, and each one of them calls them by names, said to them, "The lives of you and your children will last only for a fixed time." How am I going to make sense of that? And from the Gospel of Matthew, the 5th chapter. verse 17 through 20. Listen for the word as the Spirit brings it to you. Do not think that I have come to abolish the Torah and the prophets. I've come not to abolish them, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth have passed away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the Torah until it is all accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the reign of heaven. But those who do teach them, they will be called great in the reign of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never enter the reign of heaven. Hear what the Spirit is saying to our church. I like to fix problems when they appear. So Laura says such and such isn't working, and the next thing you know, I'm doing tech support and trying to discipline myself to avoid that. And, fix a jam stapler, fix schedules. Something happens in the congregation, I'm looking for some way to put things together so that things are fixed. And my wife says, of course, that it's a very masculine response to a problem. I immediately want to express my love by making things right when, sometimes maybe I need to just sit back and recognize that somebody has a problem and they just need to be cared for and loved, just need to be filled, maybe. And so I'm working on that too. But I'm not going to get rid of this sense that there's something that we all have to do. And it's overwhelming when I look at the world around us. Isn't it for you? I mean, look what's going on in Somalia. And the horror and the fear generated out of something like what happened in Scandinavia. Next door, there's a massage parlor, a place where human trafficking takes place. It's a huge problem, and I don't know how to fix it. And sometimes it becomes overwhelming, and it becomes discouraging, and then, we're reaching for something in our church, for the church to be able to redefine itself in a new and fresh way. So that, as I like to say, Christianity isn't so uncool. But of course, that's discouraging to think of all those things, and they weight me down, and I feel like, how could we possibly make them happen, And so then somebody's going to say, and I'd say it to you, when you're feeling overwhelmed, well, we have to work with the local option. All we can do is what we can do, so we have to do something about our own lives, shift our own lives. Except, do we? And the thing I like about evangelical churches, believe me, there are lots of things that I don't like, but the thing I like about evangelical churches is that growth and change is a category. There's a standard that you're reaching for. Now, I would grant that the standard has too firm a shape for the way I'd want to look at it, but nevertheless, there is something about being committed to a God who expects something of us and wants us to grow. Us liberal types aren't all that good at that, and that's because it's hard to figure out what it is that we would describe. I have a friend I've been talking to who's recently divorced, and he's more evangelical than I am. He's trying to figure out what on earth he is going to do with the subject of premarital sex. Right? 1 Corinthians 6 says, sorry, your temple's the Holy Spirit, you don't want to connect it to a prostitute, you don't want to get involved with something outside of marriage, and it's not a standard that he can live out in this society, at least from his point of view. So the standard's there, but at some level that container that is supposed to help him grow and develop instead has become kind of a prison. It's really broken. It's not a supportive container. I think many of us know that. And so it is that it's sort of busted open, and the church has been looking, and people have been looking lots of places to find some sort of context for living, some framework that might be able to support them as they become more than they are right now. And maybe that's why actually there's some interest in these extra-canonical Gospels. because people have looked outside what has felt like a prison to them. And so we get the Gospel of Thomas. I actually think the Gospel of Thomas is quite helpful. It's not that he disagrees with what happens in the Gospel of John, for instance. The Gospel of Thomas is calling us to look for the deeper wisdom, the deep structures in the midst of creation, to align ourselves with those. And the Gospel of Peter offers this compelling story about a God who understands suffering and who carries us forward in the midst of the difficulties and struggles of life. It's actually a wonderful image that comes to us. And the Gospel of Mary opens the heart and says, know who you really are. You are the light and the presence of God. So we get these things that provide us some context of meaning as we've broken out of the prison and reached and tried to structure it all. And then we have the Gospel of Judas. We should have left it in the ground. It has nothing whatsoever, in my view, to offer. A context for living, that we are kind of an afterthought, an accident, that really we need to move on very quickly to get rid of this earth so that we can get to the higher and more beautiful realms. This life has no particular value. In fact, in this gospel, it's implied that that's why Judas betrayed Jesus, to get on with the judgment, to get us to a place where we rise to the upper heavens, to the self-generated one. You know, I think sometimes in our world people live that way. Live as though this life has no meaning. Who could possibly think that trafficking girls from Asia to here would be the right thing to do? Who could possibly think that there's a context of meaning and then do that? You know, the responsibility that people have not taken in our economic sphere is playing a game without having any sense that the money that they're making, the businesses that they're building, have to do with livelihoods of other people, that there's meaning to a life. People are living as though Judas is right, that it's really just all pointless. But I think that you and I need to go one step further. Okay, we break out of the prison, that narrow kind of construct of what's right and what's wrong in an evangelical faith, but we can't stay in that broken out place. No. We need to recognize that something's going on, that we're a part of something. And that's where this gospel text comes in. I didn't come to destroy the Torah, says Jesus. No, he came to fulfill it. There is a structure to the way the world runs. And the Torah is all about the love of God pouring into us and then the love of God flowing out of us. What Jesus is describing in those few little words is a God whose nature is to create and generate partner that can unite with God. It is the nature of God to create relationship, to create harmony, to create beauty in the midst of it all. That's what gives your life meaning. Why is it important what you do? Because you are the light of God. Because you are an expression of God's love. Now, we don't express it. And so the purpose that we're to live out, according to Jesus here, the purpose that we're to live out is to find ways to express God's love into the world, to generate the kind of relationships that draw together in union and peace. And this always has to be reinterpreted. We got the Torah a long time ago, and then the prophets came and they reinterpreted in a particular historical circumstance. And then if I might just get a little radical and say, well, you know, basically that's what the New Testament was doing too. Interpreting Torah in a new circumstance so that people would understand that there is a structure, there is a context of meaning, that it is God's nature to generate, to create beauty and wonder in the world, and you're it. And we need to live into it. Okay, we're not going to do it by following the set of rules that we might find in 1 Corinthians 6 and 7, but that doesn't mean we aren't reaching for that next beautiful thing. We know a lot about this God, you know. We know how this God creates. That's been the beauty of the last few hundred years. You know, before we really didn't have any sense of how this God goes about creating. We just figured God spoke and poof, there it was. Or made a little clay animal and breathed into it, and there you've got Adam. Oh, but we understand a little bit more how this God creates in the world. This God creates through a process of evolution, through a process of death and new birth, through the old passing away, and out of it emerging something more and more beautiful will come. And it happens in kind of punctuated moments. It's almost like there's pressure on the system until finally it breaks open even, and something new and beautiful begins to emerge. Has that happened to our church? Has the pressure on the way we used to believe just got to the point where it burst open? I think it has, and as a result, we are reaching for something ever more beautiful, a description of the love of God. It's the way God works. The Berlin Wall, was that a surprise or what? At the time, pressure breaks open. What about this summer in the Mideast? Where did this come from? Pressure breaks open. If I'd told you 4 years ago that gay marriage would be legal in New York State, you'd have told me I was nuts, right? Pressure. And it breaks open. That's the nature of God. The nature of God's creation, the nature of God's love. And it can work in your life too. What's the change you've been looking to make? What's the change you've been avoiding? What's that next step that you might take to become one that expresses the love of God more completely in this world? You are not alone as you reach for that. The wind is at your back. The Spirit of God is blowing and pushing, and soon you will break open. And as you do, you'll share the love of God with others, and slowly but surely you will see beautiful things that we never dreamed we'd see. Judas is just plain wrong. The shape of God's creation gives you worth. Live like it.